The message from my mother-in-law came halfway through our Caribbean vacation. Wonderful news. I've solved all our problems. The business has been sold. No need to thank me. I'm Catherine Morgan, 35, and until that moment, I'd been enjoying my first real vacation in 5 years. My husband David and I had finally felt confident enough in our company's success to take 2 weeks off. Clearly, that had been a mistake. What does she mean? Sold the business? David frowned at my phone. Mom doesn't have the authority to sell anything. But Eleanor Morgan certainly thought she did. As the widow of the company's founder, she'd never accepted that her precious son had married a woman who'd ended up running Morgan Manufacturing more successfully than her late husband ever had. I quickly dialed our company's lawyer, Jack Thompson. Jack, what's happening at the office? Thank God you called. He sounded stressed. Your mother-in-law showed up with some guy named Robert Sullivan from Sullivan Industries. She's claiming she has the authority to sell as the founder's widow. They're in the conference room right now with their lawyers. I couldn't help but laugh. Eleanor had always underestimated me, always assumed I was just playing at being a CEO. She had no idea that when I married David 7 years ago, I'd already been planning for exactly this kind of power play. Put me on speaker in the conference room, I instructed Jack. It's time Eleanor learned a few things about modern business ownership. When Jack connected the call, I could hear Eleanor's imperious voice in the background. The papers are all drawn up. As James Morgan's widow, I have every right to. Actually, Eleanor, I interrupted smoothly, you don't have any rights to sell Morgan Manufacturing. Would you like to know why? The room went silent. I could picture Eleanor's face turning that particular shade of red it always did when I challenged her authority. Catherine, she said coldly, how nice of you to interrupt your vacation, but this doesn't concern you. This is Morgan family business. Interesting choice of words, I replied, because Morgan Manufacturing hasn't been Morgan family business for 5 years. The company was completely restructured when we modernized and expanded. Nonsense, Eleanor snapped. James left the company to me and David. James left his shares to you and David, I corrected her. Shares in the old company, which was dissolved when we formed Morgan Innovation Technologies, a completely separate legal entity, registered in my name. The silence that followed was deafening. I continued, Jack, please show everyone the company registration documents. You'll notice that Morgan Innovation Technologies is owned entirely by KDM Holdings, my personal corporation. Eleanor has no legal connection to the current company whatsoever. This is impossible. Eleanor's voice rose to a shriek. David, did you know about this? Of course he did, I said before David could respond. He's the CFO, he signed all the paperwork himself. I heard papers shuffling, then a male voice I didn't recognize, presumably Robert Sullivan, saying, Mrs. Morgan, is this true? Do you have any actual authority to sell this company? Eleanor stammered. Mr. Sullivan, I said professionally, I apologize for any confusion. While we're not currently interested in selling, if you'd like to discuss potential business partnerships, I'll be happy to meet with you when I return from vacation. That would be appreciated, Sullivan replied, sounding both embarrassed and impressed. Clearly, I've been misled about the ownership situation. Eleanor, I continued, I suggest you leave the office now. We can discuss your unauthorized attempts to sell company assets when I return. Jack, please escort Mrs. Morgan out and ensure she turns in any keys or access cards she may have. You can't do this to me, Eleanor protested. This is my family's company. No, Eleanor, it's my company. The company I built from the struggling manufacturing plant your husband left behind. The company I transformed into a modern technology leader. The company you tried to sell without having any legal right to do so. I could hear her spluttering with rage, but I wasn't finished. And since you're so interested in family business, let me share some news we were planning to announce when we returned. David and I are expecting, so the company's future leadership is secure, without any need for your interference. The sound of a chair crashing suggested Eleanor hadn't taken that news well. David squeezed my hand, grinning. We'd been keeping the pregnancy secret, planning a proper announcement, but Eleanor's power play had forced my hand. Jack, I added, please make sure everyone signs non-disclosure agreements before leaving. And Eleanor, check your email. You'll find a formal letter revoking your honorary board position and any remaining social privileges associated with the company. After ending the call, I turned to David. Well, that's one way to tell your mother she's going to be a grandmother. He laughed, but his eyes were serious. You know she's going to make our lives hell when we get back. She can try, I shrugged, but she's finally going to learn that her old-fashioned ideas about family business don't work in the modern world. back in our beach villa. I pulled up the company's security cameras on my laptop. Eleanor was being escorted out, her designer handbag clutched like a shield, her face a mask of fury. Robert Sullivan and his lawyers followed, looking somewhat shell-shocked. "Should we go back early?" David asked, watching over my shoulder. "Absolutely not," I replied. "Jack can handle everything, and Eleanor needs time to realize that her power plays don't work anymore." But of course, Eleanor Morgan wasn't going to go quietly. By that evening, she'd already launched her counterattack, sending a mass email to company employees about how her beloved daughter-in-law had stolen the family business. I forwarded the email to our PR team with 2 words: handle it. Within an hour, our official corporate social media channels posted a simple statement: Morgan Innovation Technologies clarifies that recent claims about company ownership are incorrect. Our corporate structure has been a matter of public record since our formation 5 years ago. We look forward to continuing our mission of technological innovation under our current leadership. The responses from employees were overwhelming: messages of support, stories about how the company had improved under my leadership, even old photos showing the transformation from the struggling factory I'd inherited to the modern technology campus we'd built. "They're on your side," David noted, reading the messages. "They remember what it was like before." I did too. When I'd first arrived at Morgan Manufacturing as a young MBA graduate married to the founder's son, the company had been hemorrhaging money, stuck in outdated manufacturing processes while the world moved toward technology-driven solutions. James Morgan, David's father, had been a good man but a stubborn one. He'd refused to change with the times, insisting that the old ways were best. Eleanor had encouraged that stubbornness, proud of her husband's traditional values. But I'd seen the potential. With David's support, I'd started small, modernizing one production line, then another, introducing new technology, retraining workers instead of laying them off. By the time James passed away 3 years into my tenure, the company was already transforming. Eleanor had fought me every step of the way. When James left his share split between her and David, she'd assumed she would control the company's future. She hadn't counted on my foresight in creating a new corporate entity, transferring all assets to a company she had no claim to. "Your mother never understood modern business," I told David as we walked along the beach that evening. "She thought marriage gave her ownership rights, that being the founder's widow meant something in corporate law. She thought being a Morgan meant more than being competent." David agreed. "That's why Dad's company was failing before you came along." My phone buzzed with another update from Jack. Eleanor had tried to call an emergency board meeting, only to discover that her honorary board position had already been revoked. She'd then tried to access company bank accounts, forgetting that her access had been removed years ago. "Should we be worried about legal challenges?" David asked. I shook my head. "Everything was done legally, with full documentation. Your father even signed off on the restructuring before he died. He knew the company needed to change to survive." "Mom never forgave him for that," David remembered, "for admitting you were right about modernizing." The next few days brought more attempts at disruption. Eleanor tried to contact major clients, but they'd all signed contracts with Morgan Innovation Technologies, not the old Morgan Manufacturing. She attempted to rally old employees, only to find that most preferred the better pay and conditions under the new company. By the time we returned from vacation, Eleanor had finally realized the extent of her powerlessness, but she had one last card to play: family loyalty. She was waiting in our driveway when we arrived home, looking every inch the wounded matriarch. "David," she called out, ignoring me completely, "are you really going to let her destroy your father's legacy?" David sighed, setting down our bags. "Mom, Catherine didn't destroy Dad's legacy, she saved it. The company was dying, she turned it around, made it successful again. That's what Dad wanted." "By stealing it from the family?" "By modernizing it," I corrected her. "By creating a new company that could compete in today's market. The old Morgan Manufacturing doesn't exist anymore, Eleanor. It couldn't survive in the modern world. Just like you can't survive in the modern business world," David added gently. "Mom, it's time to accept that things have changed." Eleanor's face crumpled. "But what am I supposed to do now? This company was my life." "No," I said firmly, "it was your husband's life, and now it's my life, and David's, and our employees' lives. You've been holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore." I softened my tone slightly. "But if you're willing to accept reality, there might be a place for you." Both Eleanor and David looked at me in surprise. "The company's charitable foundation needs a director," I continued, "someone to manage our community relations, our historical preservation efforts. It would be a real position." "Eleanor, Not an honorary title, but actual work preserving the parts of Morgan's legacy that matter. You'd trust me with that? After everything? Trust is earned, I replied. You'd start small, prove yourself, just like I did when I first joined the company. But yes, if you're willing to work within the modern structure, there's a place for you. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, studying me with new eyes. You're really having a baby? Yes, due in 7 months. And the company, it's really doing well? Better than ever, David answered, because of Catherine. Eleanor smoothed her expensive dress, visibly struggling with her pride. I may have acted hastily, she admitted finally. Perhaps we could discuss this foundation position over dinner? It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a start. Dinner would be fine, I agreed, but first, I need your keys to the house, all of them. She handed over her keys without argument. Progress, of sorts. As she drove away, David turned to me. The foundation job? Really? Why not? She needs purpose, and we need someone to manage the historical aspects of the company. Besides, I smiled, patting my still flat stomach. Our child should know their grandmother, just not the version who thinks she can sell companies she doesn't own. Over the next few months, Eleanor slowly adapted to her new role. The foundation work suited her. She had a genuine passion for preserving industrial history, and her social connections proved valuable for fundraising. The attempted sale became a running joke in company meetings. Remember that time Eleanor tried to sell the company from a golf course? Executives would chuckle. Even Eleanor learned to laugh about it, eventually. When our daughter was born, named Jamie, after David's father, Eleanor was there, hovering anxiously in the waiting room. She brought a gift, the original Morgan Manufacturing sign from the old factory. For the Foundation Museum, she explained, to remind us where we came from, even as we move forward. I hung the sign in my office, next to our current company logo, a daily reminder that progress doesn't mean forgetting history, it means building on it, improving it, making it relevant for the future. Eleanor never again tried to interfere with company operations. Instead, she threw herself into the foundation work, creating educational programs about industrial history and technological innovation. She even started a scholarship program for young women in business leadership. I was wrong about you, she told me at Jamie's first birthday party. I was so focused on preserving James's legacy that I couldn't see you were actually fulfilling it, making it better than he could have imagined. The company's success is his legacy, I replied, just not in the way you originally thought. A year after the failed sale attempt, Robert Sullivan approached us again, this time through proper channels, about a potential partnership. We ended up collaborating on a major technology project, with Eleanor's foundation documenting the merger of old and new manufacturing techniques. The story of Eleanor's attempted sale became part of company lore, a reminder that success in modern business requires more than just family names and traditional thinking. It requires innovation, adaptation, and sometimes, the courage to create something entirely new from the foundations of the old. As for me, I kept the emails and documents from that vacation incident, stored safely in my office, not as ammunition, but as a reminder that family businesses are about more than just business or family, they're about legacy, growth, and the wisdom to know the difference between preserving what matters and letting go of what doesn't. Jamie's now learning to walk through the halls of Morgan Innovation Technologies, watched over by employees who remember both the old company and the new. She'll grow up understanding that true legacy isn't about holding on to the past, it's about building a better future. And Eleanor? She finally found her place in that future, not as the controlling force she once tried to be, but as the keeper of our history, helping bridge the gap between what was and what could be. Sometimes, the biggest mistakes lead to the best outcomes. Eleanor's attempted sale had forced us to confront the last vestiges of old thinking in our modern company. Her failure had ultimately led to her success, just not in the way she'd originally planned. The end.